Looking well, mate.
And you are as well. You're looking good.
Thank you, mate. I've made a bit of an effort for tonight. Being on the screen with you, I thought I'd do my best. So yeah, I think we're on. I'm just going to check we're streaming. So yeah, we've had a lot of interest in this, Geoff. So I'm sure there'll be quite a few eyes on us tonight. Yeah, we're good. Geoff, thank you. This is like my Christmas day. In this incredible book here, Notes from a Factory Floor, you talk about having tea with your heroes, such as Chuck Norris. And yeah, I'm lucky enough to have shared several cups of tea with you. So it's always been awesome. And I'm really grateful for you giving up your time to chat shit with me today.
I really like people like you. You're brave. You want to see the truth. I like that. And you take instruction. You do the work. Not many people do. I really love your robustness. I love your, even when it's offensive to you, I like the way that you like the truth and you work with it. It's all about doing the work. People that excel are the ones that do the work. I don't meet many.
Well, I've had a few mentors and nobody's pushed me as hard as you. You're definitely the most truthful mentor that I've ever worked with. Sometimes I've liked you for it, and sometimes not so much. But you know, I've kind of stuck with you for years now. Been reading your books and continue to work and follow you. So I obviously get a lot from it. So yeah, and I'm glad you've kind of mentioned the difficult work, because that's pretty much what I want to talk about and go on tonight. So it's been a crazy 15 months, obviously, with everything that's been happening in lockdown.
Yeah.
I've just assumed, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that you've been doing all the things that you would normally do. So reading, writing, studying, walking.
Well, Sharon, my wife, has been socially distancing for 20 years anyway. That's her nature. And I've been in exile for about 5 years. I kind of became a bit hermetic for a while, because I'd been called to study and called not just to study, but to cleanse, to clean. I went through a period of kenosis. That's why I disappeared for a while. And the last 18 months of that were really extremely painful. I was on my knees. So there was a vast emptying, a vast contraction, not just within my world. I contracted everything in my world, but also in myself, in my mind, in my body. I made myself small, as Gandhi says, make yourself small. And then that made room for me to refill. Then I was given and sent teachers and instruction that enabled me to refill again. But it was the most challenging of my cleansing so far. But I've come out of it now. I'm living in a different place. I'm living in the country, and I'm just studying. I'm marinating in God every day now. That's all I'm doing. But it continues to be, excuse me, it continues to be a challenging path. Of course it is. You know, we have to fight for our will every single day. That's whoever you are. There's nobody that escapes that. While we're in a physical body, we have to get up every morning. We have to do the work. You know, obviously, if you've got yourself into a very centered place, you're invisible to most of the threat, but you can be pulled out of alignment quite quickly, quite easily, if you're not careful. The ego is, if nothing else, it's determined. It's always looking for a way back in. And the adverse forces are always looking for a way back in. So we have to get up every day and we re-win the will. And the will is the attribute of the soul. It's how we work in the world. And we have to win the will back every single day. And we have to go through the dozens or the hundreds of little deaths every single day in order to convert our burnt offerings. We create in the world through our burnt offerings. So I don't expect that to go away while I've got a physical body. But so as I contract, I expand. As I expand, I contract. As I contract, I attract new teachers. As I expand, I get rid of ego. So it's I'm always chucking stuff out. I'm always adding new stuff in, or it's being added in for me. So yeah, it's been epic, as they say.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you've published over 40 books, which is prolific, incredible. One of those was turned into a feature film, Clubbed. You've recently done a film with Orlando Bloom taking the center stage.
Yeah.
Involved in documentaries with people like Guy Ritchie, numerous plays, short films with Ray Winstone. I call you a spiritual teacher. I hope you don't mind me referring to you as a spiritual teacher. And then, of course, you know, a prolific martial arts background in where you were, you know, in Vegas teaching the legendary Chuck Norris, and now you're on.
I'm practically a legend, you know. I am. I heard two blokes in the toilet where I was in the bar saying that Geoff Thompson's a cult. He's a right cult, so it must be true. It sounded like cult anyway.
Yeah. Well, how does what I want to know is how does all of that compare to being on a podcast with me?
Oh, it pales into significance. I said to Guy Ritchie now, just rang me up, said, "Don't bother me. Don't bother me, Orlando. I'm talking to Alex. Get out of the way.
I appreciate
I'm on with my friend Alex. He wants some truth. I've got to deliver it."
Yeah, well, look, people all. I think whenever you speak, Geoff, people always learn something. I've never had a cup of tea with you and not gone away a more educated man. So I think the more people that can hear you, the better. So I'm always interested in what your training is, Geoff. Physical training. Like I know you've kind of moved through the years into different forms of training. But being a trainer myself, I always like to be a bit nosy and kind of find out what you're up to.
Yeah, physical training. It's something every day. So I do yoga every day. I do 3 sessions of qigong every day. Only short sessions, like the pranayama, the kind of breath. I do a bit of running. I do a lot of walking. Most of my training's internal. So the physical stuff I do, like the yoga, the qigong, the tai chi, that's just to keep the structure strong.
Yeah.
And to oxygenate the body, not just to oxygenate the body, but to bring prana in as well. Prana's like spirit. It's like what comes in with the breath. So I oxygenate the body. That's, you know, fills me, protects me. The physical stuff, it's been one of the most difficult things to let go of is physically hitting things, you know, lifting heavy weights, all of the ego armor had to go. So the Buddha, I kind of entered the Budo some time ago, but the Budo really means without arms. So it's about letting go of the physical stuff. But of course, part of you just wants to keep that little bit, just in case it kicks off outside the chip shop, you know, or just in case you need it. But that's the ego who is afraid to be vulnerable. He's afraid to be open. So you have to let go of all that armor. And then you develop a new armor, which is the spiritual armor, and it's much more robust than the physical armor. But the ego is like, unless I can still bang, unless I can still, you know, throw and choke and strangle, unless I've still got that fitness, you know, I'm going to be vulnerable. But of course, in order to expand, we have to be vulnerable. We have to break down all of that. And if we don't let go of it voluntarily, at some point it'll be taken off us. So I've let go of it voluntarily, but I've had other friends who have had strokes, who have had, very bad illnesses where their physical prowess has literally been ripped away from them. And they've been forced to either fall away or fall into the Budo. So for me, I knew I had to let go of it, but it was very difficult because I felt that kept me protected for a long time. You know, that right cross, that took me through hundreds of fights, and the ability to be able to grapple. You know, I trained with Neil Adams in a full-time international class for 18 months to develop my skills. These were Olympic players, and letting go of that is not easy. So you do want to keep a little bit, but you can't. You've got to let go of it all. Of course, you're never gonna forget what you've learned. But my job is to leave junior school and go to senior school. My job is to leave senior school and go to college. My job is to leave college and go to university. You know, so we're constantly expanding all the time and constantly contracting. So I can't be partly in junior school and partly in university. I can't keep that security with me. So the physical stuff, I don't hit bags. I don't wrestle. I don't lift heavy weights. But man, I did that to death. You know what I mean? I was training 3 times a day. You know, I was curling 220 at one point. You know, if I grabbed hold of you, you fucking knew I'd got hold of you. You know, but we've got to get that grip on the inside. There's an aspect internally where you go through the same wrestle, the same scrimmage, the same heavy lifting of weights. I was talking to a friend of mine who was the world powerlifting champion, and I was watching him squatting something like 7 plates. And I just said to him, that power and that center you have is what I'm looking for inside. I'm not entirely sure he understood what I meant, but I knew what I meant. I could feel his physical prowess, but I wanted that center, that stability inside. So that's a different aspect. So when you do the greater jihad, the greater fight, and the physical outside is always seen as the lesser fight. So when you're doing the greater fight, there are aspects that you find in your head where you're able to grip and hold and evade and stand and create a vacuum, or to create noise, or there's an aspect inside that can't really be described. I think the closest I've seen to describing it is Richard Rose, the mystic Richard Rose, who described the ability to change the inner aspect so that you can sit inside a vacuum, so that anything that comes close to you is pulled into that magic bowl. Or you can switch an aspect inside you which puts you into an eye wall, which makes you invisible. Certainly makes you invisible to threat, makes you invisible to attack, and it makes you very visible to higher forces, to positive forces. But that's an aspect that you have to practice with, Alex, but you can't practice that on the weights. I'm not saying that the weights and all that, I'm not saying that there aren't great benefits from all that stuff and from all the grappling. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, for my particular journey, I was asked to let go of that because my ego relied so much on the ability to be able to have a fight that I had to let go of it all and surrender it. And that's been a process. So I've let go of that, and it's all become internal. So a lot of the stuff I'm talking about now will make a lot of sense to anybody that's experienced, but probably won't make much sense if you haven't experienced it. But I do know that when I was on the door, I was already touching on this. Because when a fight kicked off and someone was wanting to kill you, and 4 of my friends were murdered during my time as a bouncer. So it was a very real threat. You had to create an eye wall. You had to create a center, and you had to be able to sit inside that. So you might have months and months of external threat, police threat. Look, if you've wounded somebody, comebacks if you've entangled with a gangster, fights that are coming up, or threats that are coming up. You've got to live with that. That's in your breakfast. That's it's in your lunch and your dinner. That's in your sex when you're having sex. That's in your mind all the time. You have to create an eye wall and sit in the center of that storm so it can't affect you, so that you're impervious to those passions. And they're battling all the time to try and break through. And obviously, you can't build an eye wall without a storm. That's the unfortunate thing, isn't it? You can't build an eye wall from reading a book. You can't build an eye wall from listening to a lecture, but you can only build an eye wall if there's a storm. So my life has been about placing myself in storms and being forced by the environment, by the egregore, by the being that's in the environment, specific environments, to create the necessary tools. So everything I learned on the door about eye walls, about the use of magic sound, about the magic bowl, about all of these different metaphysical techniques, I actually learned on the door, but didn't realize I'd learned them. It was only when I come to write notes from a factory floor and the divine CEO, it's when I come to write this that I realized, I've done these techniques before. They're just in a different way. I can't physically grab somebody now, but internally I can grab. I can still use the same concept of the eye wall. I can still use the same concept of using sound. On the door, I use sound. In Japanese Aikido, they call it Kotodama Gaku, the use of magic sound. So I used sound to wound people. I use sound to hurt people. I use sound to climb inside people and shatter their adrenals. And sometimes I did it because I needed to save my own life, and other times I did it to save their life. I knew they were in trouble. I knew they were facing people that were very, very experienced at what they did. Maybe they were mouthy factory workers, or an office worker, someone that's had too many drinks. So sometimes I use sound to protect them from themselves. But I learned to use sound as a weapon. I think in Hermes Trismegistus from the Egyptian mystics called it Heka. Same thing, the use of magic sound. It's in all of the different esoteric texts. But I realized when I was writing these two books, I know this stuff that I'm being taught internally because I've already done it. I just need to let go of the stuff that's hampering it. So I need to take the rubber ring off, if you like, and immerse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm learning a lot from doing my own writing, probably a lot more than I have in the last few years from reading. So this morning was a prime example where it was very blatant, came out on the page. I'm not going to develop by doing more squats and bicep curls. I kind of know that now.
You've done that, yeah.
Yeah, I've done, like you say, like with martial art, I've done it to death. I've done it since I was 20. It's built resilience, but it's not going to take me any further. And this leads me on to, I guess, what I want to start with. And I don't usually go into such difficult topics straight away, but I thought if I'm ever going to do this with anybody, it's going to be with Geoff Thompson, because you're somebody who does not dodge the difficult. When I talk about transformation, because of my background, health and fitness, people often think about, six packs, bigger arms, faster, stronger, think physical transformation. And rightly so, that's what I've spent my years doing. When your name is mentioned and we talk transformation, it's on a much deeper level and on a much more spiritual level. Something I'm really interested in is this discovery of, like, can a man transform his life without doing everything he kind of knows he shouldn't? So, would you be where you are at without the path that you took? And there's something that you wrote down in Notes from a Factory Floor, and I just want to kind of share this because this is important, and I think it shows a part of your transformation and how radical it's been, because you have transformed. And there's a part here that says, I knocked men unconscious. I had punched them so hard that I had snapped teeth clean out of their mouths. And then you go on to say how you would find bits of teeth in your knuckles later on. I stamped on their heads. If I punched a man unconscious and I judged him to be a future danger to me, I'd wait for him to regain consciousness and then savagely punch him out again, leaving enough injury to discourage him from coming back for more. So when you've had such a radical transformation and you're in such an amazing place now, is that only possible because you went through those things, or do you think your path would have got you there regardless of doing that?
I think if I'm looking back at my life now, I know I couldn't have been who I am now without all of those things. But that doesn't mean other people have to follow that path. Gandhi didn't kick people's teeth out, and he didn't lamp people and level them outside the chip shop. So he found his own route. But Gandhi's transformation was just as savage and just as difficult. Gandhi was a sex addict. He used to visit prostitutes. He was very fearful. He's very weak. And he ended up bringing the British Empire to its knees peacefully, without violence. He had 300 million followers at one point who would do anything he asked them to do. So he had an effect on the globe without having to do the path I did. For me, I'm a Milarepa type character. I'm an Angulimala type character. I'm a St. Paul type character. I'm a Richard Rose or a Gurdjieff type character. So I've come through a very violent background, and I'm good because there are certain people in the world who will only listen to somebody like me. So they might not listen to a priest in a dog collar because he doesn't speak their language. They'll listen to me because I won't judge them. I won't judge them for what they've done because I've done it myself. So God has placed me in a situation where I can go and stand in a prison and talk to anybody who's committed any crime and give them hope and give them inspiration and tell them that repentance or repair or return is possible because I've done it. And I can do that I can't do that if I'm judging them, Alex. And I can't judge them, and I don't judge them because everything they've done, I've done myself. I've had all of those negative energies come through me, and I've acted on them, and they've taken over my will, they've taken over my autonomy, and I've acted on them. So that, if you look at someone like Milarepa, the Buddhist murderer turned saint, killed 35 people, became a saint in one lifetime. He didn't do that despite the fact that he killed people. That happened because he had killed people. So that's the Buddhist canon saying it's possible even for murderers. And Angulimala was said to have killed 99 people, or 999, depending on which stories you read. And he cut their fingers off and he hung them around his neck on a necklace. And he was converted by the Buddha within one lifetime. He couldn't have been converted so quickly if he hadn't come from such a dark place. Mandela was, we all love Mandela as a saint, but he was a terrorist, and it took him 30 years in Robben Island before he realized that violence is just rebounding on him. It's making things worse. It's feeding the very thing he's trying to get rid of. St. Paul persecuted Christians. He was a violent man. And when you read, 17 of the books in the New Testament are written by Paul, and it's the most potent stuff in there because it's muscular, it's beautiful, it's poetic, and it comes from a place of knowing. So somebody like me, I think it's important to have somebody like me who has been physical, who understands physicality, who in no way would judge anybody else that's been physical. And it's important for me to convert and transform so I can stand in front of anybody and say it's possible. It's possible because I've done it and I'm continuing to do it. In fact, the people in Christianity, they talk about the biggest sinner has the greatest welcome, because the person who has sinned most, the person who has made the most mistakes, the person who has erred the most, the person who has damaged the most has got the most light to convert. He's got the most potential to convert. So that's the story of the prodigal son. He's welcomed back because he has so much negativity in there that he can convert into light. So when you read Notes from a Factory Floor or The Divine CEO or any of the 50 books I've written or the films or the plays, they are all products of a converted negative energy that I've brought through my body through this, what they call the burnt sacrifice or the animal sacrifice, where you sacrifice the part of your animal body or your animal soul, and I've converted it into light. So when you see this is just, I love to look at it because that is just converted violence, converted hatred. That's me sitting down for 8 weeks writing until my eyes are practically bleeding. And everything inside me saying don't sit down, everything inside me not wanting to sit down, everything inside me terrified of sitting down, and me taking those energies, all of those energies that are trying to sabotage me, and literally converting them into something beautiful. So that's the physical transformed into the spiritual. You're not just looking at words on a page. You're looking at spirit. And I'm not talking metaphorically, I'm talking literally. I'm saying that spirit has come through my body, prana, ki, chi, whatever you want to call it, breath, spirit, soul, it's come through me and it's living on these pages. That's why when somebody like you picks it up and reads it, you will feel inspired, because the spirit will be, there'll be a direct transfer of spirit from the words where they are sleeping to you. So you feel inspired. That means you are in spirit. You are spirit entering you. And you'll read that and it will excite you to live a better life, to be a kinder person, to be able to want to stand in a room and people be transformed just because you're there. Not because of Alex Myers or Geoff Thompson, but because of what comes through Alex Myers and what comes through Geoff Thompson. So the conversion of negativity to positivity is the greatest catch for any spiritual aspirant. Obviously the negative forces, they feed off the human energy, off the human essence. So they will fight like mad to stay in your body, to stay squatting in your body. A lot of them have been squatting there and feeding off us for a long time. So when you say, I'm going to write about this, I'm going to bring this to light so that this can become a light, going to fight like mad. And you will feel that in the feeling of depression, of anxiety, of a fear of putting it down on the page, a fear of what you might reveal, a fear of what people might think of you. You don't just write a book like that and put it out into the world. You put it out into the world and people judge it. Of course they do. But you also have to come and talk about it. You have to qualify it. You have to explain it. So since that book's come out, I've done 50 podcasts so far, talking to people about it. Really good people, really astute people who want it to be qualified. So this is still part of the cleansing. So I had anxiety before I come and talk to you, not because I'm anxious about talking to my friend Alex, but because I know that the part of me that feels anxious is the part of me that's going to be the burnt sacrifice, that's going to be converted into a conversation like this that will go online and stay online, so that at some point some person can switch this on and the spirit that is contained in it will come out and enter them and act as an intercessor. So it's an intercessionary conversation. So I'm still telling the story now, and somebody might pick that book up and there might be a line or a word or a chapter that just sets them on fire. And that's what they call the intercessionary writing. So they just go, I'm going to change my life. I'm possessed by lots of negative habits. Not only am I going to change my ways, but I'm going to take them habits and I'm going to convert them into something beautiful. So they're living, breathing, semi-autonomous thought forms, spirits that live inside us and feed off us and talk through us and think that they are us and we think that they are them. And what we do when we start to tell the truth is we convert those. So in I think it was St. Paul, he says, what is brought to light, he doesn't say what is brought to light becomes light. He says, what is brought to light becomes a light. So it means that what we bring to light, so if I say, this is the negative voice that's speaking through me. This is the terrible things I've done. That thing you read out there, I don't want to write that down. I don't want to write down what a bully I was. I don't want to write down that I was addicted to sexual pornography, that I was a criminal. I don't want to write those things down. But when I do that, I convert negativity into light. I bring it to light and it becomes a light. So someone else watching this might go, oh, there's Geoff Thompson. He's that guy that's won a BAFTA and written 50 books. And if he can be honest about what a shitbag he's been, then I can be honest too. If he can bring that to light and it can become a light, and he can prove it's possible to live a better life, then I can do that as well. So it gives them permission. It grants them permission. If anybody with a bit of a platform who can show that they are living a better life will do that, then it gives them permission. It opens the door for them to do it as well. So we're leaving our lessons in the marketplace for those that follow. Some may follow. So the people who have committed the most crimes, those kids out there now watching this who think there's no hope for me, maybe they've been in prison, or maybe they're in prison, or maybe they're just living a negative life. If they think there's no hope for me, well, of course that voice that's saying it is going to tell you that, because it's feeding off the fact that you're negative and you live in a negative life, and it's going to be converted into light if you change, or it's going to be booted out. So we have to just have the courage to, we have to have the courage to tell our story and to tell it with as much truth as possible. Then it becomes a light.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've used the word hope there. I think for a normal guy like me who's trying to make his life better and the life of people around him better, then yeah, hope's really important. So to hear the ugliest, darkest sides of somebody is actually really reassuring. And did I hear you right? That only took you 8 weeks?
Yeah. Well, I wrote notes. Took me 8 weeks, and then I finished on the Friday and I started CEO on the Monday, and that took me another 8 weeks. That was just the first draft. Obviously, there was periods of polishing and tidying up. Yeah, I just sat down and it just came through. But I've been avoiding these 2 books, especially notes. I was avoiding that for years. I just kept saying, "Oh, it's hard to remember. It's complicated. It was so much going on." But when I realised when I sat down, I was just scared to look at what I became. So I was being asked to go in and do another cleanse. I was going in with my Vim and my scrubbing brush, and I was cleaning the arteries and veins, cleaning out, a bit like a pin in a crab shell, getting out those last juicy remnants. Because kenosis means we empty in order to make room for Christ, or the Christ energy. But you can't part empty. You got to completely empty. This new energy, this clean energy, won't come into a dirty cell, into a dirty vessel. Just like you can put clean water through a dirty hose if you want, but it will come out dirty. So we have to do this internal cleansing in order to make room for this spirit to enter. The Christ energy comes in, mixes with the lower energy, and then you get this. People talk about the wealth the wealth divide in the world. Between the rich and the poor, but really it's an allegory. It's the wealth divide within us. So there are parts of us that are poor and in penury, and the parts of us that are elevated. And the idea of the Christ energy is that when it enters you, it brings the lower and the higher together, so that there is a balance, there's a congruence. So there's not a wealth divide within your own body. So it's never really about trying to fix the wealth gap in the world. It's about fixing it within us. It's always about fixing it within us. And if we get it right within us, then we'll start to see the effects in the world. It's about being the change you want to see, to paraphrase Gandhi.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that leads me on quite nicely. I mean, one of the debates we have in my coaching group is pretty fierce debate, which is the best book, The Divine CEO. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
This is probably slightly more challenging, I would think, to read, but also equally difficult to put down. I read this fast. I'm not a fast reader, Geoff, but this was a book that said you have to read me. Like, don't put me down. I don't usually speed read. I usually like to. It was like saying you're going to need to read me a few times, man. But read fast and then slow things down. It was amazing. And one of the words that comes up a lot in your material, and obviously if you're into spiritual development, you'll hear the word consciousness a lot. And this is something I've been studying, and something I thought I understood. But people on certain podcasts that are listening to us still kind of saying, well, we're not really sure entirely what consciousness is. And there's this beautiful piece that I've taken from CEO, and I love this. It says, if there are imperfections in the world, they are our imperfections, the faults we project on it with our skewed beliefs. It is not a planet that needs to be saved. In fact, when you become fully aware, you realize that the world is no longer even there. It doesn't exist. All that exists is vast awareness, consciousness, or God.
Yeah. So our consciousness is just our awareness. You're in your room there, and you're aware of what's in that room. I mean, if at the moment you're sat looking at me, but behind you will just be a quantum soup until you turn around and observe it, and then it falls into form. But just because you can't, at the moment, you can't see what's in the street or down the road, it doesn't mean it's not there. Everything is there already in potential. That's what divine eschatology is. It's saying that divine eschatology is about the second coming of Christ, but it really means the second coming of consciousness. It's becoming aware that everything is there in potential already. You know what I mean? So everything you want is available. That as our consciousness grows, we just become aware of it more and more. So everything is already there. It's already ours. We own it. But we have an ego, and we have concepts, precepts. We have cognitions, we have perceptions that they help us to make sense of the world, but they also limit the world. So when the Buddha had his moment of clarity under the Bodhi tree, he said that consciousness freed him from denotation. In other words, denotation means how we put labels on everything. So certainly there was no denotation. There was just this vast energy, and he was it. it was him and he was hit. So while we keep limited into our body and, looking through our conditioning, everything is like that. There's black, there's white, there's good, there's bad, there's light, there's dark, there are limitations. All of those things disappear when you let go of denotation. When you go into what I would call a state of superposition, which is a quantum thing, but it means I'm not a wave and I'm not a particle. I'm not anything. I'm not anything until I decide to become something. So while we've got concepts and precepts and rules and all that kind of stuff, like I said, it helps you to manage the world, but it keeps everything limited. If you're able to sit right back inside the observer and just watch, we watch that floating all around us, and we recognize that we are the people that give that life. If I engage it, if I identify with it, I give it life and I work with it. If I don't identify it, I can sit in the very center of the eye wall and just watch. And it's no longer a person or a house or a cow or a black person or a white person or a Chinese person, a poor person, a rich person. It's just energy forms, massive amounts of energy forms, which are all connected. They're all connected. It's everything is joined. So when you start to have these moments of expanded awareness, that's when you start to think, fucking hell, when I slag off my friend Alex, or when I slag off whoever I slag off, I'm really attacking myself. I'm really poisoning myself. When I'm unkind to other people, I'm being unkind to myself. Not just because it has to be processed through this body, or that poison, but also because they are connected to me. And in this realm, which is a realm of causation, everything that goes out returns. So we suddenly start to become very afraid of being negative. We start to become very afraid of doing unkind things because we recognize that we're going to pay for it. No one escapes it. So consciousness is it's becoming aware of dharma, which is the law, certain laws like karma, like reciprocity, and it's becoming aware of our place within that law. Not just our place as in, if I do this, it will come back at some point, or it will affect me, or it will affect my family, but also our place in, what we're meant to do with that law. What am I here to do? What is my purpose? What is my logos? And for me, I know that's what I'm doing now. This is it. My job is to tell my story from my unique perspective and from my experiences with as much honesty as I can muster, so that it can go out there, literally, the sound, the magic sound. You might not be able to see it visibly, but the sound that's coming out my mouth now is spirit. There are beings within my breath, beings within my sound, and they go out, and they once I've released them in an aligned way, they will go out and they will work. They will stay out there. They'll enter you. They'll enter other people. They'll stay online, but they'll go out into the universe and they will work. But that's, once we start to understand dharma, which is how the laws are, once we start to understand our place within that, we can go, okay, I've been put into this big vehicle, and God wants me to be a wheel hub. So I'm going to stop attacking the piston and the steering wheel. I'm going to be the best wheel hub I can be, because that's me playing my part within this great plan. What most people are doing is to go, well, I'm a wheel hub, but I'm trying to be a steering wheel, or I'm a steering wheel, but I want to be a piston. I'm a piston, but really I just want to be a leather seat. And they're meant to be a piston, but they're going, oh, he's not doing his job over there. They're not doing the job over there. So he wanders off from his position in his dharma and goes off and tries to tell other people how to do their job, but he's not doing his own job. So it's recognizing who we are, recognizing what we're meant to do, and we'll know because we'll be afraid of doing it. We'll be afraid of the thing we're most meant to do. We'll be afraid of doing it because we will have to consume ourselves in the act of doing it. And then we should get rid of everything and just do that. Get rid of everything. So there's nothing else in your life. There's nothing in my life, Alex, that doesn't come from that place of this is what I'm meant to do. I'm living and sitting in my dharma. So it's, I'm not trying to be a singer. I'm not trying to be a writer. I'm not trying to be, famous, or I'm not trying to get followers. I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. I'm just going where I'm called, and I'm talking to people, and I'm saying, this is what I've learned so far. And if the message is right, it will be over and above the words I'm saying. It won't be about the denotation. It'll be about the spirit that's within the words or within the sound. So first of all, we've got to get an understanding of the world we're living in, why we're here, what it is we're called to do within that world. And then once we've got that, you would call that waking up. So you go, okay, I woke up, but it's okay waking up, isn't it? But you wake up and you go, well, I wake up, I've woke up and I'm in this body, and I'm not really Geoff Thompson, but that's the moniker I've got. But I'm in this body, but I've got no sovereignty over it. I've got no autonomy. I've got addictions. I've got all of these rules, all these precepts and concepts, all these social mores, all this conditioning. I'm addicted to sexual pornography. I'm easily offended because I've got an abandonment scheme, or I'm quick to violence because I'm so insecure. You've got all of these things. I overeat, I overdrink. I can't stop myself from gossiping. I can't stop myself from destroying people over a coffee. So you start to realize that we are awake, but we haven't got any autonomy over our body. So that's when waking up is great. You go, I'm awake, it's fantastic. The world is beautiful. I've got potential. But you go, okay, you're awake. But then you're like Odysseus, who comes back from the Trojan Wars to Ithaca to find that his kingdom is overrun. It's overrun by vagabonds. It's an allegory. Odysseus's journey is an allegory about waking up. He wakes up, but he recognizes that he no longer has autonomy in his own kingdom. He's not even recognized. Even his servants don't recognize him, and he has to go back and he has to win back his kingdom. So, waking up is about going, okay, I'm awake, but there's lots of territories within me that I have no captaincy over. I've got no sovereignty over. We want to change the world, but we can't even change our eating habits. We want to change the world, but we can't stop ourselves from, being negative about somebody. That tells us we don't know ourselves, or we don't have sovereignty over ourselves, or we don't understand Dharma. If we just understood cause and effect, just that, and Aurobindo would say that you can't even begin to work until you understand and accept cause and effect within this realm. He said, until you understand that, you can't even begin to work. So once we understand cause and effect, we start to go, everything I think and say and do has life. It contains being, and it goes out into the world and it works, and it will always return like a boomerang. So it would be silly to do negative things when you know it's going to come back. If you don't believe cause and effect, if you don't believe reciprocity, if you think you see proof that that's not true, you haven't done the work. You haven't done the rigor. You just got to look. I used to look at my friends and they'd say, oh, so-and-so, cause and effect doesn't work. He's a millionaire. Look at him. He's a drug dealer. He's a millionaire. But I'd watch him quietly. I had a lot of friends like this. I'd watch him quietly. He was 6 stone overweight. He was uncomfortable. His wife was on Valium because the police were kicking his door down every 2 weeks at 4 a.m. He'd got court cases lingering. He'd got people threatening to kill him. He'd got a lot of money, but I've never seen a man so miserable and so unhappy. And even people that loved him, like me, eventually had to turn away from him because he was violent with us. He was violent with the people that used to love him. Certainly were very afraid of him. So they said, cause and effect. It doesn't work because he's got away with it. Because they think that because he's got money, that he'd escape cause and effect. First of all, they're looking at things in the intermediary. So cause and effect doesn't, everything isn't instant karma. Some things take time to unfold. And karma unfolds whether we're watching it or not. It doesn't need us to witness it. This particular guy took 15 years and now he's doing 2 life sentences. So he won't come out again. He's doing, I'm bearing in mind this is one of lots of guys, I could name 10 people who this has happened to who are my friends. But I love this guy. He was very, very good to me when I was working the doors. He was very kind to me. And I idolized him and I watched how he went down that path. So if we don't believe in cause and effect, if we don't believe in reciprocity, then we haven't done the rigor. We haven't looked deeply enough. We only have to look. We only have to open our eyes and look a little bit closer and see karma working all the time. People carry their karma on their skin, and when you understand this, and you start to see people who think they're getting away with things, you start to feel really compassionate and sorry for them, because you know what they've got coming. So we have to. If we don't understand it, then we have to make it our job to understand it. That's the open door of inquiry, as I like to call it. So we don't just look around and go, oh well, he's rich and they're rich and those politicians are getting away with everything. This is the human condition. Nobody gets away with anything. Karma keeps a perfect book, and it always returns everything. That's quite frightening to hear. That's the reason most people deny causality, is because it's frightening to hear, because they suddenly think all those things I thought had gone, they've got to come back. And I don't know how they're going to come back. Are they going to come back as illness, as blocks? Are they going to come back literally in my life? I'm going to have to look at these things again in order to process them, in order to return back to the center, to our homeostasis, our spiritual center. We have to return. Buddhism, that's what they call repentance. Repentance means to return. It means to repair the damage. It means to find refuge. That's what people like me and you are doing with our life. We've done things that we're not proud of. We're owning them. We've stopped doing them. We've owned them, and we've brought them to light, and we've converted them. And then our job is to say to people, this is how I escaped. It's not about judgment. It's just about it's just about the world of causality. So it's good. The study is out there if you want to see it, but also if you just look closely at your life and look at the people that we think are escaping causality, nobody does. Nobody does. No.
So, in terms of some strategy here, if you're somebody who's listening to this and all of the things that you've mentioned are occurring in their life, they might be out of shape, gossiping, full of hate, full of anger, full of jealousy, and it feels like there's so much to fix, so much shit to sort out. Firstly, where does somebody start? And then if we are talking karma and so on, and somebody's sitting there 55, 60, 65 years of age and thinking, shit, I've had a lifetime of wrongs, like, I'm not going to be able to offset this. That's me done. Why should I even bother to start to try and correct some of my wrongs?
Good question. Great question. That's a great question. We can't offset it anyway, Alex. There's too much. None of us can, no matter how old you are. But the moment you acknowledge it, the moment you accept that you've done it and stop doing it and turn towards goodness, turn towards love, or turn towards God, the forgiveness automatically starts. One thing I do know is a lot of the things we do wrong are unconscious, and there's so many of them we can never repair them, but they can be repaired for us. If we turn towards this light and take one step towards it, it will take 10 towards us. So the idea is that we don't repair, we don't repent. All we do is bring them forward and expose them and say, I take full responsibility for this, and then it's repaired for us. And the way it's repaired and the way it's repented is different for everybody. It's never too late, ever too late. Milarepa killed 35 people. This isn't an allegory, this is historical. In a revenge attack, because some people had disrespected his family, and you would feel it would be impossible. Even one of the people he killed was his girlfriend's father. You think it would be impossible for him to find refuge after that, but it was that drove him towards finding it. And he went and trained with a teacher called Marpa. And Marpa, well, I won't go through it, but Marpa basically shattered his ego. He put him through exercises that shattered his ego. When his ego shattered, he was able to let go of the personality and find complete enlightenment in one lifetime. So that can happen. From my own experience, the repair and the repentance has just taken time. That's more for my benefit. So it didn't shatter me to try and fix everything in one go. So it's never too late. But we can't repair and repent if we continue to keep doing the things we're doing. What we've got to do, first of all, is stop doing them. Before we can stop doing them, we've got to accept that we're doing them. We need wisdom. You know, we need reason. We need to be able to look at things and go, yeah, you know, like with you, with your palate. You're an expert on palate. You know exactly what you can get away with, what you can eat, what you can't eat. You know exactly what foods do what. We've got to know that with all of the food. So anything that comes in through the senses, through the eyes, through the ears, you know, through touch, through smell, through sound, anything that comes in is food. So we have to start to discern, and everything that goes out, you know, again, if we bring in shit in, we're going to be putting shit out. So we have to start discerning all of the food we take in, not just the physical food, but also the invisible food, like the sounds, like what we hear. If we're watching soaps every night, if you're sitting watching soaps or watching violent films or watching sexual pornography or gossiping, or if you're getting 6 or 7 hours of that a night, fucking hell, it's the best training in the world to become negative. It's the best training in the world to fill yourself with bile. So we have to start recognizing that everything that's ingested is food, and as it enters us, it literally becomes us. The moment we engage it, the moment it goes in, it becomes flesh. So we have to start to educate ourselves, expand our awareness, and start to have the discipline to no longer do those things. So, you know, no longer allow demons across the threshold when we watch sexual pornography or violent pornography or you know, be witness to unkindness. So we have to start recognizing that we're taking the food in all the time. There are energies around us all the time that are looking to feed on us, and they'll come through the television screen, and they will feast on us. They will come through, you know, I watched something the other day. I caught the end of something, and I watched 5 celebrities on Gogglebox, and they were watching a film, and somebody got brutally murdered in the film, and every single one of these intelligent people jumped up cheering. Oh, they were so happy. And that's what conditioning does for you. You know, not only, you know, like if you look at, say if you look at some of the big Hollywood filmmakers who will build the antagonist up till you hate him. As a viewer, you hate him, so that when the protagonist, the good guy, comes along and slaughters him with more violence than he used before, we're cheering and clapping. So it's masturbation. These negative energies feed off this all the time. Eventually, as you start getting cleaner, as you start dissolving the ego and exposing the soul, revealing the soul, you won't be able to watch that stuff. You won't be able to take it in. It'll be so painful. It's so painful to look at it, to take it in. So you end up having to step outside of mainstream society and put yourself in a place where you're not exposed to that. You've got protection. You can sit in an eye wall, but you know, with the best will in the world, even if you're in an eye wall, if you're surrounded by negativity all the time, it's going to penetrate. So you just start to put yourself in situations where that isn't in the frequency, where that doesn't exist in your frequency. It's spat out by your frequency. But before we can do that with the world, we have to do it with ourselves. So these adverse forces, these negative energies, these concepts or precepts, these cognitions, or these, what Eckhart Tolle calls semi-autonomous thought forms, they live in us. They're like parasites. So we have to get them out. We get them out by starving them out. You know, we know what they feed on. Because what I used to say to you about diet, I'm not bothered what you're eating. I'm more concerned about what you're feeding. What are you feeding? You know, what's all that armor there for? What are we feeding? So you stop feeding it. You start putting the food into your body that's going to only feed a higher level spiritual being within you, and you get rid of all of the negative stuff, all the junk, all the stuff that we love to gorge on, all the stuff that we like the excess of, even and all the stuff that we're sold as. We're even sold it by our leaders. It's okay. It's okay to murder yourself with a drink. It's okay if you're on holiday, fuck it, you know, you're on holiday, eat as much as you want. That's what you're there for. I'm not here to diet. But the holiday doesn't change cause and effect. You just come back with 2 stone on, you know. So we have to step aside from conventional society, and we have to open our eyes, and we have to look at what is true, and then go, that is true, that is real, and I'm going to change that. But that means, first of all, we have to go to war internally. We have to stop feeding the parasites, and they're going to kick off. Some of them have been in us, not just, I'm 61, so some of them haven't just been in me 61 years. Some of these are, as Krishnamurti would say, some of these are thousands of years old, passed down from generation to generation. They're not going to go without a fight. So this is what Muhammad said about the greater jihad, when all the soldiers are coming back to the village from war, and some of them are dismembered, and some of them are dying, some of them have died, and he's clapping them. Well done on the lesser jihad. And they're outraged, they're really angry. What do you mean lesser jihad? He said, no matter how brutal the fight is out there, it's still the lesser jihad. The greater jihad is inside. So rather than go out and fight projections of what's in us, we go inside and we get rid of, we actually get rid of the parasites that are making those projections, that are taking our autonomy. Then you're cooking on gas. That's worth getting up in the morning for. And believe me, the study is there. If you really want to study this stuff, if you really do the work, no matter how difficult, especially if you've lived a difficult life, if you've lived a violent life, you'll be welcomed with open arms. These beings, these amorphous beings, these incorporeal beings, some of them will be corporeal. The moment you align yourself to repentance, to return, to repair, you will be noticed. You will be noticed by these beings, and they will come and assist you. They will come from everywhere. You'll have books dropping out the sky. You'll have serendipity. You'll have synchronicity. These good beings want to help. They will form themselves around you. They are there. They're always there. If you fall out of alignment, this is something Al-Ghazali said. Al-Ghazali was a great Islamic imam. And he said, if you fall out of alignment or fall into vice, you are noticed. And when he said it, just reading it, I'm telling you, he said it to me because, when these teachers come to me in books, they're in my room with me. They're sat with me. It's real. And when he says you are noticed, he's saying the moment you fall out of alignment, you are noticed. And the more aligned you are, the more dangerous you are to these adverse forces, the more you will be noticed if you fall out of alignment. And the more dangerous you are to good people and to bad people. So what it's saying is if you start to do the right things, you will attract teachers. They'll come to you. They'll have no choice but to help you. They want to help you. Their own development is increased and speeded up by them helping you. So all good spiritual aspirants know that they expand and learn and grow when they serve other people. A big part of spiritual ascension is that you have to pass on what you've learned to other people. So the teachers are there, and they are there for everybody. They are there especially for people who have lived negative lives. It's a great question, but it's never too late.
Yeah, and this is where I get stuck at this point here. So, for example, January, you take your shirt off and you look in the mirror, and the mirror reflects back and it says you're eating too much. You can't get away from it. This is what you like. Go and control your palate a bit more. Go and train. Be careful of what you consume. And something that always comes up is not engaging some of the jealousy, the anger that strikes us. That's not always, as clear to be seen as what the mirror can show you. These things are inside us, so they're a little bit trickier. When you say do not, you don't want to engage with these things, it's fine for them to be there, for them to arise, but don't engage with them. So if we're talking about anger and jealousy and things that can cause certain behaviors, how do we not engage when something comes up in us, when the girlfriend does something that triggers all sorts of anger and jealousy, and it's there and it's that feeling and it grabs you and it's almost like it's took over you? Like, how do we separate from that?
How do you do it when you have the urge to eat a Mars bar, or you probably don't even have the urge anymore, but if you have the urge to eat negative food, if you have the urge to watch sexual pornography, what do you do?
Well, with the food side, it's almost as much strategy as it is mindset. So, you know, you don't bring the things into the house. What I find with emotions like anger is they jump up on you. They pounce out, you know.
But they can only do that, Alex, if there's a hub in you.
Yeah.
If there's a friend in you, like if these energies, if you imagine that thought forms exist outside of you, so we don't create thoughts, we engage thoughts, so it exists as a separate realm, you know, like gravity. But some of these thought forms will have hubs within you. So if you've engaged negativity in the past, or if you've been damaged in the past, they'll have little kind of partners inside you. Aurobindo called them partners. So they'll have little hubs, little frequencies. So this negative energy comes around and go, oh, Alex has got the same frequency. I'll feed off Alex. Sticks a pipe in, anger. That energy feeds off you. It feeds in you. So the parasite in you is fed. The larger body, the mothership, is fed. And then it wanders off again. And every now and again, it just rises up again. So what you have to do is recognize that if you haven't got that frequency, if you get the parasite out of you, so if you get the anger parasite, the insecurity parasite out of you by no longer feeding it, and by no longer engaging it, eventually these forms that are this adverse forces that are roaming like lions looking for prey, they won't you'll be completely invisible to them, because there is no parasite in you. The way to get rid of the parasite is that it will rise up to feed. When it rises up to feed, it exposes its position. But if we're used to engaging it, if that's what we've done for a long time, we don't know that this feeling isn't us. And when we engage it, it doesn't know it's not us. It thinks it's us, and we think it's us. So when we engage a thought, a feeling, emotion, when we engage it here at the Plender gap, that's the gateway. When we engage it, it incarnates us. When it incarnates us, we give it life. So it becomes us. So we're no longer angry. We become angry, and then we go, I was angry. I am angry. But actually, it's not you that's angry. It's not, you know, it wasn't you that was angry. It's not you that's angry, but something in you is angry. Once you recognize that, then you can lay a trap for it. You can go, okay, when that feeling rises up again, instead of engaging it and going, she did this and they did that, and feeding it, because the moment we think it and engage it and speak it and act on it, of course it's gorged. It's had its breakfast, dinner, tea and supper. It's fed. It's literally feeding off human emotion. It's feeding off, well, Eckhart Tolle calls it pain bodies, feeding off pain bodies, pain feeding off pain. So if you don't engage it, if you don't identify with it, if you go, this is not how I'm going to live my life, I'm not going to engage this. Every time it rises up and it's not engaged, it is weakened, it's exposed. And the part of it that isn't engaged, that pops its head out of above the parapet, becomes consumed in the light and becomes a light. So the nature of it will be liberated, and the effulgence will come across to you as energy. So every time you have the feeling that you are angry, or that you're jealous, or that you're any of the emotions, you know, like any kind of arousal, you have the choice about whether or not you engage them. It's completely, even if it's comes through the autonomous system, we still have the choice about whether we engage it or not. It's like standing in a nightclub door. It's down to me whether I engage somebody that comes to the door. I can let them in or not let them in. This is what the allegory of the vampire is about. It's just the vampires. It's an allegory for these amorphous energies. If they can't cross our threshold unless we give them permission, they can't come into the house. This is the house. This is the threshold. Well, this is the threshold here. So when the energy rises up, we practice not engaging it. In Christian mythology, in Christian mysticism, they would call this apophatic theology, which means finding God through negation, or finding the self through negation, or cleaning the body out through negation. So we get rid of everything in us that's not clean. So we go, am I anger? Do I want to live angry? Do I want to live with jealousy? No. So at some point, you've got to get that parasite out of you. When the parasite's not in you anymore, believe me, you are invisible to these forces. They will only find matching frequencies. If the frequency is within you and you let it within you, it will feed off you all day long. And you will find yourself saying, I did this, Why was I angry? I wasn't myself. I'm not normally like that, or it just came over me, and we think it's us. But not, like I said, not only that, these energies, when they take over us, they think they're us as well. They take over our mindset. So when you started with your food, I would imagine at the beginning you'd have had a massive inspiration to get a great shape, and that would have been enough incentive for you to resist the negative foods, to learn what was good. So this is discernment. Learn what are good foods, learn what are bad foods, learn what foods do, and only eat and attract the right foods. That's about discernment. And then when the feeling rose up to eat negative foods, you went to war with it until eventually it didn't rise up at all. In fact, you learned to love the good food. And then if you did have a bad day and have some negative food, your body wouldn't suit it. So you start to crave the really, really healthy food. So you train yourself with all the foods in exactly the same way. With the parasites, it's the same. The parasites, and they are very real beings. Like I said, if you get a chance to read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, he talks about them as pain bodies. He talks about a world pain body. So he's really talking about a demon or a semi-autonomous thought form, and he's talking about a mothership, an atmosphere of adverse forces around us that are always looking for light frequencies. He tells the story, Eckhart Tolle, about how he managed to evict one of these pain bodies from one of his patients. It was a very powerful pain body, and he said he felt it leave her in his office. He said he went for a meal in a restaurant afterwards, and he said, and he felt the energy in the room. He said he felt it circulate the room. This was her energy that he got out of her. It circulated the room, and he said, I felt it try to enter me, but there was no frequency. He said, I have no hate in me, no anger. He said, and suddenly, he said, it alighted in a guy in the corner in a wheelchair, and he just exploded, kicked off. He had to get the police in. It was violent. It found a like frequency. So what we have to do is recognize that these forces, these energies, they are there. They're part of this realm. You would call this a demonic realm. They're part of this realm. They're just parasites like any other parasite. And if we learn how to, first of all, evict them from our body, or exercise them from our body by not feeding them, then you won't be at that frequency. There will always be the temptation, but we learn to keep ourselves in the center.
You blow my mind, Geoff Thompson. You're pretty good at this. You should write a book.
I should write a book, shouldn't I?
Divine CEO, Geoff. People are in pain. I understand that. They are suffering. I've been there myself many times. I do not doubt or underestimate their position. I deeply empathize. But even in the direst circumstance, perhaps especially in dire times, we all still have the power to choose what we engage, what we identify with, and how we react to our situation. And I love this bit here. We can only change our future position if we alter our present actions. So I think everything that we've just spoke about is summed up perfectly in that paragraph that I read every day.
And that book just came through me. I had nothing to do with that book. I finished The Divine CEO, which I felt was like a burnt sacrifice. The notes from a factory floor is all of my sin, it's all of my confessions, it's all of me outing myself and what a monster and what a bully I was. When I emptied that was a kenosis. I finished it on the Friday. I've been trying to write The Divine CEO for a few years, and I just couldn't find it. And I walked up to Coombe Abbey up by us, and 20 chapter headings downloaded in my head as I was walking. I had to write them in emails and send them to myself. And I didn't know the chapter headings before. When I came back, I just put them down, and then I sat down on the Monday and I wrote it over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I had nothing to do with it. The reason I know it's a great book is because it came through me, and it told me things I didn't know or knew. And it speaks to people. It's like you would read it and think I haven't written it. Even though it picks up my flavors and my stories, the stuff is beyond me. It's beyond my knowing. So I've been studying since I wrote that book 3 or 4 years ago. I've been studying full time Kabbalah, Zohar, Tanya, lots of the Judaic stuff, lots of the Buddhist stuff, lots of the Hindu mythology, lots of the Sikh mythology. I've been fully immersed in it, and I'm just starting to understand myself some of the stuff that was revealed to me in the Divine CEO. It's been explained to me through all of these different mythologies. That the information that I've got, I mean, like for instance, the Zohar. It's a 24-volume book, and it's written so esoterically that it absolutely shatters the ego. To sit and read it, it shatters the ego because you can't make any sense of it. But that book, that set of books arrived on my doorstep free 3 years before, when I went and did the documentary for Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie and Madonna are obviously very into Kabbalah and that. I did this documentary about the ego with Guy Ritchie, and these books arrived on my doorstep 3 days later. And I was so frightened of them, Alex. I couldn't open the package for a month, and I didn't read them for 3 years. Then after I had these two books came out, and I was absolutely empty. This voice just said, "It's time to read the Zohar." So I sat down and I wrote full time. I read full time for the next 4 or 5 months. Full time, just read. So I got through all the books. I made 70 pages of notes. And then after that, I followed the notes, because the notes took me off in all sorts of different directions, and then just kept reducing the notes until I ended up with a single concept. And that was my reward for the whole thing. And the single concept that I was left with was one word, just one word, out of 24 volumes. Each of these volumes was about 500 or 600 pages long. And I ended up with one word. And that one word was like an acorn. Within the acorn, if you plant it in fertile soil and you let it germinate and let it unfold, that one acorn has the potential in its lifetime to create an oak tree that's 200 feet high and 500 years old, and produces in its lifetime 1 million more acorns. So that one acorn I got from all that stuff, that one seed, he said, "Okay, we've given you a seed, one word. We want you to study that. But within that one word, there is going to be the potential for another oak tree with 1 million more of these seeds. And each of those seeds has the potential to do 1 million other seeds ad infinitum." So the ability to grow and to expand and to understand is never ending. But a big part of the development is that we don't know fully what we know until we tell other people what we know. That's why it's important that you're writing a book. Why it's important that we're talking here now, because I'm telling you things I don't know. And then when I tell him, I thought, well, I knew that, but I wasn't really very conscious of it. So the idea is that when we share those, maybe we'll get 80% of it through the teaching, through the learning, through the experience. But that last 20% only comes when you share it with other people. So the sharing with other people is important, but we have to have the courage to say, these are the things I did wrong. These are the mistakes I made, and be so brutally honest with it, that the honesty itself, no matter how heinous it might be, becomes beautiful because it's so abandoned and it's so honest, and it's not blaming, it's not projecting, it's not making excuses. There is a real power in true repentance. There's a real power.
Can you remember what the word was that you shrunk all?
Breath.
Does that mean I don't have to read all 24 verses now?
The word you end up with doesn't really mean much because it's specific to you. So with me, my study of the Zohar and the Tanya and the Talmud, I was, studying all the different Judaic stuff. So you'd have a word here, a word there. You'd have something that might be separated by 3 months, something that might be separated by 1,000 pages, and they don't mean anything until you put them together. And it was only when I reduced my 70 pages of notes, so I took notes on the notes, and I took notes on the notes on the notes until I ended up with breath, and all of the different words that came, were all referencing the same thing. Spirit is contained in breath. That was basically it. So spirit is breath. So when we breathe in, we're breathing in spirit. When we breathe out, we're breathing out spirit. But what kind of filters are we breathing in through? And what kind of filters are we breathing it out through? If I'm breathing negativity, I'm breathing in negative spirit. You know, I'm breathing in fallen spirit, and then I'm breathing out fallen spirit. So I'm contributing to this world and the world out there negatively. When you start to breathe in positive spirit, like we're doing now, this is a direct exchange of spirit, of ki or chi or prana, or whatever you want to call it. We're doing a direct exchange of it. So we're breathing it in, we're breathing it out. So I'm contributing to this body in the highest possible way, and I'm contributing to the world in the most positive way. So again, I want to assure you that I don't expect people to understand it, but I'm sure some people will, but I'm not being allegorical. When I say that I'm breathing out spirit, I'm talking literally about beings, spirits that leave my mouth and go out into the world and work. And the more I can do that through a clean filter, the more I can contribute to this world, to these different, what would they call them, territories, all of these different territories within my own body. I'm contributing to this, and I'm contributing to the world because I'm breathing out spirit from a place of alignment, like what you would call righteous, which means right path. So it's aligned, it's coming from a place of love, it's coming from a desire to serve. So I'm breathing out spirit, I'm breathing in spirit. I'm not breathing in shit, breathing out shit. I'm not breathing in unkindness, breathing out unkindness. I've cleaned my filters. I'm continuing. I'm still a work in progress. I've still got work to do, the same as everybody else. So it's literal. I mean, I had an epiphany when I was in the shower and I saw these spirits. I mean, I was shown them. It was vast and it was incredible. I was shown that everything, the water, the shower head, the shower cubicle, the house, the car, the phone, was congealed spirit that had formed itself specifically so that I could communicate, specifically so that I could clean, specifically so that I could serve God. Everything in that house, that whole house, was just spirit formed into a shape. All of it was living, all of it was conscious, and all of it was there just to serve me because I wanted to serve God. All of it. And I was shown, I had this moment of clarity where I just saw it. It was very difficult to explain, but it was shown to me that, of course, if you're working from a place of love and you want to serve, if you want to receive in order to share, all of these spirits are gonna gallop towards you to help you to do that, because they will be able to transcend themselves in the sacrifice of your service. So they sacrifice themselves. They are consumed in the act of your volition. So all of this stuff, which is all around us, is constantly looking to transcend, and a lot of it can only transcend if it works through a physical body, through a living being. So our job is to, if we can get excited about that, we go, crikey, the more centered I am, the more I will attract these positive spirits, the more they will be able to transcend through me, and the more I will be able to grow, because I'm acting as a hub. I'm acting as like a portal for them. They can come out and they can create, and a lot of them end up like that. If you look at these books behind me on the shelf, I've written 50 books. They're in my books there. You know, you'd be amazed. You know, you do a film, you've got no money, and you get one of the biggest stars in the world to act in it. You know, Orlando Bloom. Well, we got Ray Winston to act in a short film. We didn't have enough money to pay for his lunch. That came because we are telling a story from a place of brutal truth. So it's a conversion of material to spiritual. So, you know, we're doing film. Every time we do a film, somebody gives me the money to make it. Somebody provides the money so that it can happen. People feel compelled to help us make the films because the films are intercessionary. You know, like Romans is a film about the metaphysical power of forgiveness. It cost Orlando Bloom money to do that film, but he felt compelled to do it. He didn't know why. He felt compelled to do it. But I can't tell you how difficult it was for me to do that film. Well, you know the story because you've read Notes from a Factory Floor. But I had to expose elements of myself that were layers and layers deep with shame. About self-abuse, sexual self-abuse. And that's on the film. That's on the screen. That's why the film is getting so much airplay in America. Orlando is getting some of the best reviews of his life. But the point I'm making is that you attract. There's nothing you can't attract if it is in the aim of serving from a place of love. Everything you need will be provided. Everything. But if we allow the ego to come in, and we suddenly want fame and recognition for it, we suddenly want to be validated or noticed. We suddenly want to go, yeah, I want my name big on the poster. It breaks it all.
Is there another book coming?
I've written a book called 99 Reasons to Forgive.
You've done it?
And yeah, but it just came through me again. I said to God, look, I'm talking to people about forgiveness, but I can't articulate it. I can't articulate how powerful it is because I don't fully understand it. I said, I'd really like to write something that I can give to people because I'm talking to a lot of people and I'm trying to say to them, do you realize how much power you have if you can forgive? And forgive in the sense of giving it over. And I said, but I don't fully understand it. So I can't articulate it. And I can't help people if I can't articulate it. So I was meditating in the morning. It just dropped into my head, 99 Reasons to Forgive. So I wrote it down. And during the writing of that, I was sent 120 hours of lecture by a Jewish rabbi on repentance, forgiveness and repentance. 120 hours of what do you talk about for 120 hours? But the amount of stuff that came to me, just through intuitions, follow this link, follow that, I ended up with hundreds and hundreds of hours of instruction that I was able to put into a book that is saying something that nobody's saying at the moment. It's really a book about repentance.
I can't wait for that one. And
yeah.
You mentioned vulnerability at the time. Again, it's described perfectly in Notes from a Factory Floor. After you poured your heart and soul into 12 months of writing for the BBC, a project that didn't quite come about. You staged your first play, Dorman, which was quite traumatic experience, and your kids were there to see the play, and it was almost like, look, here's everything I've done, here's everything wrong.
God, it was like a life review,
and you said it led to a pretty dark time, very, very heavy depression. The words you used at the time: vulnerable, weak, emasculated, and this is probably the only chapter I've ever read in a book where tears were rolling down my face as I was reading it. It really, really touched on me because vulnerability is something that most men don't want to do, even in the privacy of their own home, let alone write on a private page and share it to the world. So what is vulnerability and why is it important? Why is it important for a man to own it? And then what was the need in you, Geoff, to put that on there and then tell everybody about the time when you're at your most vulnerable?
Because I recognize that every blow I landed, every violent act, every violence against myself, every negative thing I did was in me. It was in my plumbing. It was in my body. It was stored in every cell. It wasn't like you just wake up and go, oh, I'm going to be spiritual. So it doesn't matter that I battered hundreds of people. It doesn't matter that I was a criminal. It doesn't matter that I had affairs on my wife. It doesn't matter, that I left my kids. It doesn't. None of those things matter because I'm spiritual now. Those things are still in the plumbing. And in order to get them out, I had to look at them. They were feeding on me all the time. They led me towards sexual pornography. They led me towards psychotic jealousy. They led me towards, lots of violence. They led me towards depression. So I needed to clean them out of me. And the only way to clean them out of me was to go through this process of burnt sacrifice. In the Old Testament, they call it the burnt sacrifice. In other words, you find all those sins, and sin just means error. We've missed the target, and you bring them up into consciousness. Jung would call this individuation. You bring up what's in the unconscious and you process it into the conscious. But the danger with that is, Alex, is that when you're bringing up stuff from the unconscious, if you haven't got a strong enough observer, a strong enough will, a strong enough eyewall, these these energies, as they rise up to be processed, can grab you and pull you down into that unconscious. So I knew I needed to process them. So that book is a process of individuation. But because I'd been so violent and because I'd committed so many crimes and did so many things wrong, there was a lot to come up. But I knew I couldn't be refilled until I was first emptied. So my feeling with all my work from the very beginning is that I'm depressed. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat. I don't want to go on. It's like a long day. No one can help me. My wife is afraid of me because I'm following around like a puppy because I'm so sad. The doctor wants to put me on tablets. You know, I'm frightened to go to work. I'm frightened of being around people. I'm frightened of waking up because I've got a demon sitting on my chest when I wake up. And I just remember thinking when I reading, and I had this hope that maybe someone can give me the answers, but every time I read books, they weren't telling me. They were afraid to be vulnerable. They were afraid to say, this is what I've done wrong and this is what I've learned. And I remember saying to myself, when I find the truth, I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell everybody. Because there are other people out there like me who are suffering. And there are other people that don't see the gift of depression. They don't see the gift of fear. You know, they don't see the gift of anxiety. They don't see that if your world is a map, that fear and depression is the cross that marks treasure. It's a harbinger of hope. It's saying to you, look at these feelings, listen to these feelings, go into these feelings. These feelings need to be exposed and converted. Something is hiding in you. It's coming up because it wants to be released. You've got to find a way of releasing it. So everything I do is about this process of individuation, and my personal part of my dharma is to share it with other people. Not everybody has to write down what they've done and put it on a stage at the Belgrade Theatre, but that's what God's asked me to do. So for me to get it out, I have to first bring it up, and it has to parade past me, have to see it and have to own it and say, yeah, that's me. I did that. That was happened on my watch. I'm deeply ashamed. I no longer do that. I no longer will do that. I don't blame anybody for that. And then it is cleaned for you. But you have to look at it. You have to watch all of it. But that's what the books are. That's me watching. That's my public individuation. Me publicly bringing up all the stuff from the unconscious, converting it into a light. So then that book goes out and it is a light for people. It's not light, it is a light. People will read it and it will act as a light. It will shine a light on their own darkness. And it will say to them, this is a gift, what's in your life at the moment. It doesn't feel like a gift, but it's a gift. And it's worth getting up in the morning because now you can study. You can clean this, you can get rid of this, and you can elevate and expand. So for me, my dharma is to, as a guy that's lived a very violent and depraved life, my dharma is to clean that publicly, show people the cleaning, and show people the transition and show people that it's possible. You know, they need to see somebody, they need to see that it's possible. What St. Paul says was that when I'm at my weakest, I'm at my strongest. When we're most vulnerable, we're most powerful. Because what do we do when we're vulnerable, when we're weak? We let go of the ego, it collapses, it jumps ship, and then we can allow the spirit to come through. We can allow the Holy Dove to come through. We can't, the Holy Dove isn't going to come through while the ego still wants to play a part. So the ego has to collapse at some point. It has to be collapsed. It has to suffer an ego death. And for me, as a guy that had a big reputation as a fighter, as a hard man of repute, hundreds of fights, you know, knocking people out every night, to be on your knees in Kumabi, begging for mercy, begging for this to be taken out of me, terrified. Believe me, it's humbling. You know, it's very humbling to be on your knees and to be sobbing and just to be accessing something you don't understand and just saying, I can't do this. You've got to help me. You know, you've got to take this out of me. And it's you have to the ego has to be completely emasculated. Otherwise, it's always going to be running around. It's always going to be keeping autonomy over your life. The ego is a very bad master, but it's a good servant.
Yeah, I totally understand the cleansing now in the writing, so I don't need to ask you questions really about why you spill your heart and soul out onto a page. I understand it through the process of doing. Probably
Yeah.
years ago.
Freedom, isn't it?
It's terrifying, but it's quite freeing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole mixture of feelings. Geoff,
That's when you access. That's when you access spirit. That's when you access guides. That's when you access the incorporeal beings. They come to you and they guide you when the ego collapses. When you go, I don't know what to do. I'm helpless. They'll come and help you. And then eventually, you win your will, and then you give your will over to a higher power. So then you have will, but it's and you have freedom. It's a freedom under a greater authority. So we have to let go of our little tiny intellect and give it over to this divine sat nav. Then this divine sat nav will manage our life for us and say, go forward, come back. It will calculate. It will be like light coming through water. It will calculate the billions of possible routes and just take you along the optimum route. So it's no longer, we're no longer working, as these tiny little plods of earth. We're actually got this God energy working through us and guiding us. And everything is provided then. Everything you need is provided. The roof over your head, the car you need, the money that you need will just miraculously turn up. It's very mysterious, but very spectacular. It's very beautiful. Like I said, there is a process of weaning away from the ego and weaning into the soul. But at some point, there has to be a leap of faith where we let go of the ego completely. And if we don't, it will be, like I said, if we hold on to it too long, it will be taken from us. And it can be quite a very scary place to be. But it's worth it. It's worth doing it because there's peace at the end of it.
Yes, I think that's what keeps me on this path. Geoff, I'm aware of time because Sharon said you've got about 90 minutes, but there's one more question and a couple of books that I'd like to share with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So this is a question that's actually not from me. So this is somebody very special that has said, we were having this conversation today and we both pretty much said, tell you what, we'll ask Geoff because Geoff knows everything. That's what I'll go to now. I'll ask Geoff. And it was quite an interesting topic because once we got into it, it sounded quite obvious. But then once we started to discuss this, we were unsure of what we thought the outcome was. So it was, are we born with traits that won't change no matter what happens or influences in the modern world? So I compared this to like when you get an animal, when you get a dog. I had a mastiff, big French mastiff, 80 kilos he was, and I trained him so that his behaviours were how I wanted them to be. He's a nice boy. He weed outside and he ate his food when he was told, and he didn't touch my food. So I trained his behaviours, but his traits and his character, like he was a mastiff. Like I couldn't train that out of him. He was a guard dog. If anyone threatened me, boom, he was there. Is it the same in humans where we have these traits, or can we manipulate and alter our state and who we are at any point, regardless of the context of society that we're in?
Yeah, we definitely can change them. We definitely have traits. They call it the divine inheritance, or the divine gift, or the divine. They call it the divine gift or the divine curse. Depends on how you look at it. So we definitely are born with traits. We definitely have those traits, but we've always got to remember that we've got free will. Once we wake up and we understand the observer, we understand engagement, and we understand that reality only exists at the level of engagement. Even our DNA can be changed through our own actions. So it doesn't matter whether it's inborn, whether it's something I've learned, nature or nurture, whether I've been born with it or whether it's something I've learned. It can't action itself until I engage it. So it doesn't matter whether I was born with it or whether I learned it. Once we understand the observer self, these things still have to pass through the Plender gap. They still have to pass through the doorway of the heart, they call it, the doorway to the will. The heart in allegorical text is the will. So it has to still go through the Plender gap, through the gate, and we have to engage it. So whether I was born with this trait or whether I learnt this trait, it still has no reality if I don't engage it. And if it rises up and I don't engage it, say if it was a divine curse. It's something I was born with in my genes. It was something I was born with, in my physical, mental, and psychological body. Say I was born with it. It still has to rise up, and it still has to be engaged. And if I refuse to do that, eventually it will dissipate, and it will die because it's not being fed. When that happens, that means I'm not just cleaning for myself. I'm cleaning for my generations. I'm starting to, as Jung says, I'm starting to, what did he say? He said, we can never get away from the fact that we're always going to be dealing with the dead. So once we start to clean our own stuff, our own karma, and we start to get that clear, our ancestors, rise from the dead and go, he's cleaning. Geoff is cleaning. So they start to come forward and we can start cleaning for our ancestors. So if I've got traits, like I had a very bad jealousy trait that I got from my dad and from my dad's side of the family, every time that came up, if I didn't engage it, if I refused to engage it, if I refused to identify with it, eventually the nature of that complaint will be elevated, and the energy that's locked inside it will just dissipate into me, and I'll expand in consciousness. So yes, we are born with traits. That's scientifically validated, but also the latest science is telling us that we can change that. We can change that because it doesn't matter where it comes from. If it comes from outside, from inside, from nature, or from nurture, it has to pass through the gateway to the heart. It has to pass through the gateway to the will. If we don't allow it to pass through, eventually it will be dissolved because it's not being fed. Whether it comes from 3,000 years ago, whether it comes from 20 years ago, it has to be fed in order to sustain itself. And it can't be fed if we don't engage it. So the only thing we need to learn to do is access the observer, find where the doorway is, stand at the doorway like a professional bouncer, and only let the good stuff in.
Phenomenal. And to finish, Geoff Thompson, few books. Conversations with God. We read this one?
Yes, I read all those years ago. Really liked Neil Donald Walsh.
The Body Keeps Score? I've
not read that one, no.
Fantastic.
Good, yeah.
One of my personal favourites. This doesn't get enough eyes for me. Hunt in the Shadow.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah,
brilliant.
I love that one as well.
Wow, every time, and for every guy that I've worked with, they love this book.
Oh yeah, thank you, thanks.
Fingerprints of the Gods. Interested? Graham Hancock.
I've read that years and years ago. I can't remember the content, but I do remember it. Yeah.
You're ahead of me, Geoff Thompson. You're years ahead of me. Maps of Meaning, Jordan Peterson.
I like Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Brilliant. He's got a new book out as well, Geoff. That's good.
He's a good guy.
These are very simple, but some of my favourite. The Stephen Pressfield series,
Yeah.
Tool Pro. This is you all over this kind of thing. Do the work.
Yeah.
And Pro.
Right.
And then Mr. Tony Summers told me that you recommended the Red Book by Cole.
Yeah. Oh, Jung is great. I mean, that's the best of all the Jung books, but I really like Jung. Yeah.
Yeah, I tackled one of his, and it was heavy to say the least. Anybody who's listening, pick up the Divine CEO. Pick up notes from a factory floor. I can't tell you which of these I would pick if I had to, because they're both fantastic. Geoff Thompson, you've been on great form, tremendous. You're looking super, and that was phenomenal.
Thank you, Bab. I really appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
We've had a few comments. I'll just share one of them with you. Got to go, Alex, but that was brilliant. Thank you so much, Geoff. Geoff Thompson, you're a legend. Thank you.
Thanks, Bab. Thank you.